Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. We are also broadcasting now live on Facebook. It is Sunday, March 18th, 2018, the 2nd of Nisan, 5778. I am here in Gush Etzion, and it's been, once again, I feel like a broken record. It's been a very difficult weekend here in Israel. This just maybe an hour ago, a security guard, an Israeli security guard, severely wounded, fighting for his life, stabbed in the old city of Jerusalem. The Arab terrorist from the Shechem area. Originally, they thought maybe he was some type of Turkish national or whatnot, but as of just a few minutes ago, according to Ynet, he was actually a resident of the Palestinian Authority living in the Shechem area. So that just right now is happening as I'm talking to you on Facebook Live and broadcasting this for my Monday show. So that's what's going on now here in Israel, and that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of news. So much happening, and keep listening to the show. I'm not going to have it all here on Facebook Live, everything going on, but wanted to touch on that. And then, of course, this all happening as Israel is burying two soldiers murdered in a car ramming attack in the northern Shomron, northern Samaria on Friday. And those who were murdered identified on Saturday night, Captain Ziv Daus, 21 years old, from Azor near Jaffa, and Sergeant Netanel Kaalani, 20 years old, from Moshav Eliakim near Megiddo. So that's the latest. That's everything going on here in Israel. And it's just over and over. I feel like a broken record talking to you and doing this show after these attacks, because it's just never ending. You have waves, and I'm not referring to the daily rock attacks, which never go away. That happens each and every day here in Judea and Samaria and in Jerusalem and in other places. That happens each and every day. But in terms of these car rammings and the stabbings, it goes up and down, and it looks like this is another up period here. And, of course, as always, Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority, who pays terrorists while they serve times in Israeli jails on a sliding scale. The more carnage you cause, the more money you make. The daily incitement, which I bring up over and over again, you can follow it on Palestinian Media Watch and see how the next generation of Arabs living under the PA are being educated to really understand why this is happening over and over and over again. And you hear our leaders talk tough. You hear different proposals. Now, we'll get to it later in the show, but you hear talk of implementing the death penalty. And by the way, if you listened a few weeks ago, we had on Maurice Hirsch from Palestinian Media Watch, who said that Israel already has the death penalty. They just have to carry it out if and when they deem it appropriate. I mean, I don't know about you, but it seems to me that when you murder two soldiers, the death penalty should be an option. And in addition to exiling the family, in addition to once and for all getting rid of the Palestinian Authority, who incites each and every single day. Forget about Hamas. Hamas does that on a regular basis. We know that. It's out in the open. There are no secrets there. We know who Hamas is. I mean, you will have some argue that ISIS is even worse. Just because ISIS has a better PR department doesn't mean that they're worse than Hamas. Hamas is just as evil. And we'll talk a little bit more later in the show about the terror tunnel, another terror tunnel which was discovered and destroyed by Israel today. But back to the attacks over the weekend, today's attack in the Old City, and the two soldiers who were murdered on Friday. I believe now it's 4 people murdered, and since the beginning of 2018. I mean, what is the end game? At one point, I made Aliyah. I moved to Israel in 2002, and eventually Prime Minister at that time, Ariel Sharon, and we can talk about the Gaza withdrawal and what that's led to, and I will later on. But it got to a point after the Park Hotel massacre, that Ariel Sharon said enough, and carried out a major military operation to weed out the terror cells within Judea and Samaria. And thank God in terms of the suicide bombings, that was put to an end, more or less, as a result of a policy. I mean, it took, I think at that point, I don't know how many hundreds were already dead. At what point here do we say enough is enough? At what point do we send Mahmoud Abbas packing, giving him and all his cronies and Jibril Rajub and everyone else who incites to violence and to murder a one-way ticket out of here? What will it take? What is the price? How many people have to, God forbid, be hurt, injured, or die before we take that type of serious action instead of bolstering the PA and Fatah and Mahmoud Abbas, saying goodbye once and for all? I'm just curious. Maybe out there, maybe you know in the world of radio, in the world of Facebook who's watching this live, maybe you know what it will take. I don't know what it will take. But so far we've had the two people murdered in the Shomron, one in a shooting attack at the beginning of the year, and then another Israeli murdered, and now we have two more soldiers who are dead. In terms of the wounded soldiers from Friday, the latest is that the third victim was seriously wounded. He is now not in life-threatening condition anymore. He is stabilized from what I just hear from, I believe he's in Shaarei Tzedek in Jerusalem. That's third soldier, and then there was another one or two soldiers who were lightly wounded. But that third soldier, please God, I don't have his name. They haven't released it for publication. He should have a speedy recovery. But now we're dealing today with another security guard, another Israeli who is at this very second fighting for his life after being stabbed in the old city of Jerusalem. So that's going on right now. The Prime Minister Netanyahu issuing a statement. This is after Friday's attack on Saturday night, sending condolences, talking about demolishing the house of the terrorist. This goes back and forth. They destroy a room here, a room there. The Supreme Court says you can't destroy a house, you can't destroy this room, that room. It goes on and on and on. And the longer it takes, the less effect it actually has. I mean, I think that's the minimum they should be doing. They could be doing a lot more than just destroying a house. I don't even know if that house destroying policy does anything. I mean, I think the death penalty is definitely, or could be more effective. I think exiling the family, sending them out of here would be much more effective, sending a strong message. And I want to be clear. The IDF, and I've been clear before, the IDF is out in the field 24/7. We don't know how many of these attacks are thwarted. It could be tens or dozens or 50 or hundreds each and every week or each and every month. And we don't know about it because they can't release that information for security reasons. So this is not an attack, God forbid, on our troops who are out in the field. Without them, there'd be many, many more attacks, many, many more dead Israelis. It's only thanks to the IDF that the numbers aren't even higher. That being said, the order from the top down, has to come eventually. And I want to know, what is the breaking point? Is it 4 dead? Is it 5, God forbid, dead? Is it 10? Is it 15? At what point does the game change? At what point do we remember each and every victim and their names? And I'm embarrassed that I don't remember each and every name because there's so many people who've been murdered in these jihadist terror attacks. I'm ashamed of myself for not remembering each and every one and each and every name because there have been so many. But during this current wave, I'm asking, what is the breaking point? At what point do we stop saying we have to be resilient and we're just going to carry on like nothing's happening? And that's a victory for the terrorists, against the terrorists rather, by stating we're just going to carry on with our lives and that's the only way we have to do it and we have to keep going back. At what point do we stop our lives and say enough is enough and our leaders take responsibility and take charge of the situation and we don't go back to our daily lives? We stop our daily lives and demand that enough is enough. That's the question I have. So on that note, I'm going to turn off the Facebook Live. I'm going to continue to record my show for those listening here on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. I'm going to give you my contact information, josh@thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, you're watching now. If you're watching live, it's Joshua Hasten. On Twitter, @Josh Hasten. So we'll continue to update on everything going on, and I'm sure the rest of the Land of Israel hosts this week will also update you on everything going on. And, let's hear some good news. I promise later in the show there will be some good news out of Israel. I promise you that. But as you can probably hear, I'm extremely frustrated, extremely saddened, extremely angry, a lot of emotions here on Sunday in Jerusalem when it's it just became spring, basically. It's beautiful weather outside. The trees are blossoming. We have Passover, Pesach in just 2 weeks, and things should be beautiful. Unfortunately, you have these people out there who want to destroy the state of Israel, who want to still today, after all these years, destroy the Jewish people, and they're trying to get us out of that Passover spirit, get us out of the mood, and they're attacking us, and enough is enough. So thanks for listening. I'm gonna pause now. The radio show, turn off Facebook Live, and let's only hear good news from this point onward. It's only the beginning of the week. Hopefully it'll get much, much better. And we are back. Josh Hasten here, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Thanks for joining us. You can be in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter, at Josh Hasten. And again, if this is a broken record, the last 10 minutes or the first 10 minutes of the show, I apologize, but it feels like a broken record here on the ground with the jihadist evil terror, which continues to affect all of our lives. Obviously, the victims and their families first and foremost, but it spirals down to everybody. We are all one big family here, and it affects us all. Avigdor Lieberman, the defense minister, calling for the death penalty to be imposed on Palestinian terrorists, here reported by the Jerusalem Post. Those who commit severe attacks he believes should be put to death. And I agree with Avigdor Lieberman here, but how many times are we talking about it? Israel does have the death penalty on the books. Eichmann was the only one, the Nazi Adolf Eichmann, the only one who was given that sentence. Avigdor Lieberman here in the paper blaming the ongoing incitement in the Palestinian media and the generous payments made by the PA to the families of incarcerated terrorists, saying that these are serious contributing factors to the attacks. I agree. And he says here 10,000 shekels a month. That is how much some of them are making sitting in Israeli jails. So I ask, when are we going to implement it? How many is it going to take before that is the case? In response to Friday's attack, Major General Yoav Mordechai, the head of COGET, Coordinator of Government Activities in the Territories, canceling the work permits enjoyed by the families of the terrorists. That about 97 permits issued to the family of this Ala Kaba, 26 years old, from the village of Barta'a near Jenin, who, by the way, is a former security prisoner, somehow released in 2017. He was captured shortly after the attack on Friday. He's still alive. I don't know why, but he was a security threat. Somehow he was released. He admitted, according to this report in the Jerusalem Post, that he intentionally hit the soldiers with his car, and his parents, of course, his family, saying it was an accident. But he himself admitted it, so we know the intention here, and it's no surprise. Right before this happened, right before Shabbat, this past Friday, and it was still not confirmed going into Shabbat that this was in fact a terror attack, but now it is obviously a terror attack. So that's Avigdor Lieberman, our defense minister, and his party, Israel Beitenu, MK Oded 4, seconding Avigdor Lieberman's idea or plan of implementing the death penalty. But then you also have someone who isn't considered, I guess, on the right, maybe in the center, I don't know, whatever you want to call him, and I hate those terms, right, left, center, but Deputy Minister Michael Oren saying here, according to Arutz Sheva, Israel National News, that the rules of engagement have to change. On Saturday night, following Friday's attack, he says the IDF needs to change its rules of engagement. He said there is no sure way to ensure that a terrorist is neutralized. Therefore, soldiers who encounter terrorists in the middle of an act of terrorism must be instructed to open fire to kill, not to neutralize. This is Michael Oren talking, okay? He said a terrorist who carries out a terror attack constitutes a real threat, and in order to protect the lives of our soldiers and the general public, the rules of engagement must be changed. The only way to ensure that a terrorist is indeed neutralized and poses no threat is by shooting in order to kill. This is Deputy Minister Michael Oren, according to Arutz Sheva. He noted that the LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department, and their rules of engagement require the policeman to shoot at a person who poses a threat in order to kill. And then he expressed his condolences to the family. So that's Michael Oren saying that A terrorist should not get out of any attack alive. And I agree with him 100%. There are those who say we need information from some of these terrorists, and in certain cases that might be true, but enough is enough already. These guys go to jail, and they go to the country club and get all these stipends and money and benefits from the Palestinian Authority. We have to shut that off, shut that down. We need to shut off the incitement spewing media outlets and the internet and the Facebook, and go to Palestinian Media Watch. Each and every day you can see it, how they incite to violence and praise what they call martyrs, shaheeds, men and women, and name town squares and soccer tournaments after these people. It has to stop already. Why does the Palestinian Authority have internet when this is what they spew? Why do they have the right to broadcast? I don't think any other country in the world would put up with this, and I don't think we should either. Back to the Friday car ramming and the aftermath of the car ramming. The J-Post reports the IDF went into the village and carried out many raids on Saturday night. The village of Barta'a, if you will, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, near Jenin, where the terrorists came from, and seized a whole bunch of weapons, improvised rifle and all types of weapons, and made arrests in that village. And on Friday, there were these clashes between Israel and those living under the PA. Hamas called for a day of rage, and the end result was the murder of 2 Israeli soldiers. Now, almost every day is essentially a day of rage here. They declare official days of rage all the time, but each and every day there are rocket attacks, and we've seen rocket attacks from Gaza in recent weeks, a little bit of an upswing in those. But there's no doubt where the inspiration comes from, be it Hamas, be it the Palestinian Authority. Shut off their internet, shut off their TV when they spew all of this garbage and hate and evil. This past Friday, by the way, this was the excuse. The excuse for the riots by the PA Arabs was that this was 100 days since the U.S. President Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. So the president of a third country, another nation, not that I'm calling Gaza or the PA a country, but another entity, if you will, makes a statement and decides he's going to move the embassy to Jerusalem. And who bears the brunt of his statement? Israel. But let's not be fooled. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump or his statements. That is the excuse. Just like in 2000, the excuse was Ariel Sharon, who wasn't even the prime minister then, went up to the Temple Mount, and that's why they rioted, even though that was a premeditated act. Everything that Israel does or somebody does vis-a-vis Israel is an excuse to try to murder as many Jews, as many Israelis as possible. Back to the Friday attack, reported today by Times of Israel, the condition of one of the 2 soldiers hospitalized has improved. He is no longer in life-threatening danger, according to a hospital spokesperson in Jerusalem. 2 other injured soldiers remain hospitalized in Beilinson in Petah Tikva, but that 3rd soldier, who was initially described to be in life-threatening condition, is no longer in threat of losing his life, thank God, but I'm sure the road to recovery is long and could be forever, for the rest of his life. He could have to be in a state of recovery and therapy as a result of this horrific attack. And here's the proof right here. The Memory Institute, another organization that translates news all over the Middle East, reports here via Israel National News that the chairman of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, last week held a reception at PA headquarters in Ramallah for I don't know how to pronounce his name, Rajai Haddad, a terrorist from Jerusalem who served a 20-year prison term, complicit in the murder of an Israeli in the Old City. This is from 1998. Abbas congratulated Haddad, noting that the, quote, prisoners issue holds a special place in the priorities of the Palestinian leadership that works to free all the prisoners from what he calls the occupation's prisons. The so-called martyrs, the terrorists, the jihadists are praised from top down for Mahmoud Abbas and all of his cronies who funnel all of this money that they get from the world communities especially the European Union and many others, and use it to build their mansions. There was another article, I don't have it in front of me, about the PA mission in New York, that they went off on on some sort of wild hotel weekend with a $15,000 bill. I don't have all the exact information, but here you have, everyone claims that there's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and yet the PA heads are drinking champagne in New York hotels and partying it up in New York and in Washington or whatnot, and everyone ignores it. And the money still gets to the Palestinian Authority. The money still, Israel's complicit also for allowing all of this so-called humanitarian aid into Gaza. Why are we giving them all of this aid? Just last week it was reported that once again they tried to smuggle in different types of, in the past they've smuggled in different types of equipment to be used for weapons. This time they smuggled in, or tried to smuggle in, IDF uniforms to be used in future attacks, and yet somehow we're proud that we supply on a daily basis. They're holding the bodies of our soldiers there, and there are Israelis who are alive, as far as we know, in Gaza. They're holding them, and we still bring in the trucks and ship tons of goods, and we're such great humanitarians. But is that really humanitarian? Is that humane to provide the enemy with goods and services and building materials, and they consistently try to smuggle illegal materials in, and then the materials they are allowed to have in, they use in order to build their rockets and build their terror tunnels? Why are we doing that? Why do we continue to send Gaza all of this aid? I don't get it. Today in the news, we don't have to go further than today. Times of Israel reports this is a huge news day here in Israel. If you're just joining us, a huge news day. IDF destroys 2 Gaza tunnels amid rising border tensions, reported by Times of Israel. The Israeli military on Sunday announced it destroyed 2 attack tunnels, one that entered Israeli territory and another one inside of Gaza. More terror tunnels. Maybe somebody will acknowledge that leaving Gaza, throwing 10,000 people out of their homes in 2005 and pulling out every IDF soldier from Gaza was a mistake, with rockets increased by 500%, and now we have to deal with these terror tunnels. Again, another 2 discovered today. One apparently was an older one. They tried to reopen it, and now they're detonating these IEDs on the border. The J-Post reports that on Saturday, IDF troops fired shells at a Hamas outpost after an improvised explosive device was detonated along the Gaza border, according to the IDF spokesman's unit. And this happened, I think, at least 4 or 5 times in the last month or so, and soldiers were wounded in one of these IED explosions just last month, or earlier in this month, if I'm not mistaken. Yet we continue to bring in the trucks supplying Gaza, Hamas-led Gaza, with all of this humanitarian aid. Is that really humanitarian? I ask you, dear listener, is that the humanitarian aid? To put the lives of the residents of Gaza before our soldiers, is that really considered humanitarian? You tell me. Send me an email, josh@thelandofisrael.com. I want to know your thoughts on that. At the same time in the news, I told you it is a busy, busy news day here. The terrorist who murdered Rabbi Itamar Ben-Gal last month at the Ariel Junction was apprehended, arrested. The IDF reported here, Israel National News. IDF, in conjunction with the Shin Bet, that's our internal security service, arrested in the PA-controlled city of Shechem, the terrorist, the same place where today's terrorist came from in the old city. Arrested the terrorist responsible for the murder of Rabbi Itamar Ben-Gal in February from the community of Har Bracha. He was an Israeli Arab from Jaffa. He eluded arrest over the last 6 weeks. He is now in police custody. And again, unfortunately, will be going to a Israeli prison where he and his family will be taken care of, unless we stop this nonsense, by the Palestinian Authority for the rest of his life. Maybe he'll even be a millionaire if he comes out of jail someday, even though we can sentence him to life. God forbid there should be no more of these prisoner exchanges. Read Rabbi Stuart Weiss's column from this Friday's Jerusalem Post on how detrimental it is to exchange. He was referring to the Gilad Shalit trade. So many terrorists for Israelis, and how he states how many Israeli, I think he said the number was 12, if I'm not mistaken, Israelis have been killed or murdered by those who were released in the Shalit deal. Go and reread the article and confirm, and you have to confirm that because I don't have the actual number, but he says that for sure Israelis have been murdered as a result of our policy of exchanging 1,027 terrorists for Gilad Shalit. Instead of saying to Hamas, we are going to bomb you night and day until you give us back our soldier. That should have been the policy. But I digress here. I mean, this is positive, the fact that the murderer of Rabbi Itamar Ben Gal was apprehended. Unfortunately, as we started the show, he's still alive. He's still alive after committing that attack. And we need to change policy, folks. We really need to change policy. Okay, take a deep breath. I'm going to take a deep breath. The show's nearly over. And we didn't have any guests on the show. There was just so much news from today's attack, from the attack on Friday, the arrest of this terrorist who murdered Rabbi Ben Gvir, the terror tunnels in Gaza. After all of that, there was just no time for a guest today on the show. I hope you understand. And we try to bring you the best and most knowledgeable guests that we can, but today was, call it a rant if you will, call it what you want, frustration, anger, sadness over everything. Despite it all, and this is the kicker, despite it all, Ynet reported the other day that Israel, again, as they did in 2017, again in 2018, ranks as the 11th happiest country in the world. It blows my mind that this is the case, but it is true. This is a happy, happy country, despite the 25 minutes of bad news that I just ran off here on my show. Israel remains the 11th happiest country, ahead of the United States, ahead of Britain, ahead of the United Arab Emirates, and many other countries. 11th happiest country in the world, and that says a lot. That says a lot about what's going on and what we're doing here, despite it all, in the Jewish state of Israel. Come join us, even with the downs. There are many more ups than downs, folks. I don't want to create a perception that it's all bad. It's all bad news. I mean, it has to be reported. This information has to be shared because I know it's not in the mainstream media. Here and there, perhaps, but I know it's not out there. So we have to share it here on the Land of Israel Network, even the bad news, and that's why we do it, and that's why I do it. But there is hope. There is hope for the future, with Israel still being a happy, happy, wonderful place to be as we head towards Passover in the month of April almost here in Israel. Spring right around the corner. We're changing the clocks this week. We're moving forward. As they say, spring ahead. We're springing ahead this Thursday night in Israel. Don't forget to change your clocks if you're listening here. And let's only hope for a quiet week. It's been anything but, and it's only Sunday. My name's Josh Hasten. Get in touch with me. I'll give you the way to reach me again one last time. Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, Joshua Hasten. And you can check out the Facebook live video I did in conjunction with the first half of the show. On Twitter at Josh Hasten. Let's hear some quiet from this point on the rest of the week. Shout out to Ben Bresky for all the technical work that he does to make this a reality, and all the other wonderful hosts here on the network. Shalom, shalom from Gush Etzion, everyone out there in the wonderful world of ours. Between now and when we speak again next week, everybody be safe. Shalom, shalom.